To my do-it-yourself channel, and this is another video on the Honda Odyssey that I have. It's a 2010 Honda Odyssey EX, and it's a 3.5 liter VTEC. The check battery light came on, and my wife mentioned that it had a squealing noise from the engine, and that was very similar to the power steering going bad, or there is a recall on the power steering pump. If you have this Honda, probably you should, and if you get a squeaking noise from the engine here, you may want to check the recall notices on the power steering pump. And usually it's a smaller fix, and in my case the Honda dealer replaced it out of warranty, and it was done years ago. But I checked it and it was not the power steering, so it seemed like there is something wrong with the alternator. So I looked at the alternator and the battery voltage was fine. So what I'm going to show you is how you can test the alternator and the battery. You need a multimeter or something where you can check the voltage. So what I'm going to do is, I have my multimeter here. I'll put a link to the product. Also, you can buy, not too expensive, within $30 you can get a multimeter. So to look at the battery voltage, I'm going to have the connections here, and this shows me at 12.94, partly because I had charged this battery, and I will tell you how it drained when the alternator goes bad. But this looks like a good battery, and you can also take this to any of the auto stores and they will probably check your battery and alternator for free. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start the engine and I will check the voltage on it. Usually for a good alternator you will get something around 14 volts at the battery terminal, so that's the voltage that you are looking for. If it's bad, you will get much lower. And in my case, what happened is, I checked the alternator voltage was pretty good. It was still 14.2, and I thought about whether something else is wrong. So there might be other things that might be wrong. First, check your belt. So you want to check the serpentine belt, and that should be very tight. And also, when I start the engine, I will ask you to check the serpentine belt and stuff. So there is the alternator right there. I'm going to take the cover off. To pop the cover, I will turn these two little plastic screws and they will pop out, and then you can remove the cover. There are two more pins over here, this one and this one, so they attach in those areas. Engine, and you will see the voltage is still going to be 12.4, which is not good. It needs to be 14 and above. The other thing you can do is also check that the serpentine belt is working fine. There is no wobbling in there. I'm going to turn the engine off, and before I do that, I will mention one thing. If you have the EXL model or the one that is the limited, you might have a VCM engine, which is the variable cylinder, and you might have a leak here. And just watch if there is any leak of oil coming in. You might have a leak down in the floor also. The reason I mention the leak is sometimes your alternator will fail because you had engine oil dripping into your alternator, and this is a very well-known problem, and you may want to look at a repair for the spool valve. They call it the spool valve or the VVT solenoid. It's the same thing, and it has this area where you want to see if there is any leakage of oil, because if you put the alternator right sitting right underneath it, if you put a new alternator and you have your oil leaking into the alternator, that will ruin your new alternator within a month or so. So you may want to fix the solenoid that sits right here Part of the solenoid will be like two gaskets that you have to buy and replace. The other thing I want to mention is to check the tensioner pulley. It's very difficult to see here because there's hardly any space in here, but the tensioner pulley, if it's bad, it will start wobbling here there, and that's why I wanted you to check that the belt is running fine. Now the important thing is, what do you do? Where do you get a new alternator, right? So that's a very important decision here, and you have three choices. You can go buy a new alternator. You can buy a used alternator off, off a junkyard or maybe on eBay, and you can also buy a remanufactured alternator. So what I would recommend is go with the OEM alternator that is already in your car. It's made by DENSO, and these are made by Nippon DENSO, and they are sold by multiple different retailers. I got this one from Summit Racing, and also I will put some links in my video. You can subscribe to my video and channel and see the other videos I have. But in Summit Racing, the other one you can buy from, I found very similar deals from rockauto.com as well as carid.com, and you will see the links down there. One thing you want to mention, I want to mention here is, if you are not buying a DENSO, you are taking chances on an aftermarket alternator, and that may last maybe a few years. If you're lucky, it may only last a few months. But I was very inclined to go with, say, a Bosch alternator. That was my alternative. It has a good pricing on it, but these are all remanufactured. But then I read the reviews and I found that DENSO is the way to go. So this one cost me around $145 with free shipping. That's why I went with Summit Racing. And you can probably go with Rock Auto, which is also a good one to buy from, and CarID. They have different shipping prices, and whichever works for you at that time, you can buy from. You can also buy from Amazon. The things about these are, they charge you a core fee, which is around $70 to $80. So what I'm going to do is, once I take my alternator, I'm not going to try to repair it. I'm going to send it back to get the core charge back, and that brings the alternator itself price to $145 for me. You can buy it on Amazon. You don't have to, you pay around $200 and you can keep your alternator. So if you want to keep the old one or try to repair it, you can buy it from Amazon. I'll put a link also there. You can also go to any of the auto parts store, because these usually take 2 or 3 days, and if you can't wait that long, the best bet is go to the auto parts store. They will also sell the DENSO brand. It's a little more expensive. It's probably in the $250 to $300 range, but in my case I was able to wait for these to arrive. The other thing is, if you go to a dealer, the prices I got from the dealer for the remanufactured one was around $630 plus taxes. And so if you get it replaced by a dealer, of course they will charge you for the labor and the parts, which comes to around, in this area, it's pretty expensive. It's like $900 to probably $1,000. So if I can do it myself for $145, that saves quite a bit of money, and I'm going to do that. So one thing to note is, once you get the alternator shipped, you may want to check any damage on the alternator. I had checked this. These are remanufactured. If you find a new DENSO alternator, then you should buy that, assuming that it's not a bad price. But in my case, I was fine with a remanufactured for now. I'll put the model number for this alternator and since these cars take on DENSO, I believe this should be the exact fit. So you also want to rotate and see if there is any noise coming out of it, and it should move freely. The model number for this one is 2100750. It's from DENSO, and it's a remanufactured alternator. You can see that it's made in US, and it has it's a remanufactured, but it looks pretty good. They probably paint it and also, you know, put in new bearings and everything, so hopefully it will last me.